Hi guys, and welcome to this video tutorial on how to reskin your C42 elevator. The elevator we're working with today is from a C42A. We intend on making video tutorials for all of the control surfaces as the jobs come through. So hopefully by the time you're reskinning your aircraft, there's a tutorial for everything. But let's get started with the elevator anyway. Right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is flip the elevator over and knock the mandrel out of the rivet on the side that doesn't have the trim tab. If your rivets are in pretty poor condition and rusty like these, then you may as well go ahead and drill out both of them now, which is exactly what I'm going to do. So once you've punched out the mandrels, drill out the rivet with a 3/16 drill bit. I'm going to drill this other one because, like I say, it's a little crusty. Next, you're going to want to undo this bolt here, which should allow the two elevator halves to become separate. Right, there we go. Once you get the two elevator halves apart, put aside one of them. I like to start with the side that doesn't have the trim servo and the trim tab because it's easier and it gets me in the mood. Next, you're going to want to remove the two hinges. We've made up this special tool because if you try to put a screwdriver in the hole and turn it from there, you can damage the hole and find that the clevis pin doesn't want to go back in afterwards. If you haven't got a specialist tool, an adjustable spanner will do the trick nicely. Next, remove the two M6 bolts that hold the compression struts in position. Now, using the knife bolt in the end, and the bolt inboard, twist the trailing edge tube, leading edge tube. Remove the hardware, this one's a little crusty. There we go. And now you can slide the leading edge tube all the way out. I like to thread the saddle washers onto the bolts just to help keep track of where they came from. Next, pull the rest of the framework out of the old skin. There we go, and cast the old skin aside. Right, at this point you want to check the components. Check them for corrosion, check them for abrasion, check them for wear. So common issues, things to look out for, are the little foam rings that go on these plastic nubs can disintegrate, and when they do, these aluminium tubes will wind up eating their way into this trailing edge tube. And if you do see that, then it is a must that that's replaced, of course. Right, so the first thing you want to do is take one of these little donuts and fit it to the center stub on this leading edge tube. Now that's the only one that Comco specifies, but I like to take 3 more and fit them onto the stubs on the trailing edge tube, because like I said to you earlier, we often see that the tubes have eaten their way through this trailing edge tube. So if I can do this and prevent that needing to be replaced in future, then I will. Right, I'm going to start assembling the frame inside the new skin, starting with the trailing edge tube. Worth mentioning, you don't need one of these donuts on the outer two, because the tubes sit over the top of these steel fittings. Right, there's the first of 3 in position. If I made that look easy, it wasn't. Here we go again. Try to get the second one in without knocking the first one out of position. There we go, that's 2. Last but not least, the inboard most compression strut. Here we go, now I've got all 3 of the compression struts in position. I can feel on this trailing edge that they're all interlocked with the little stubs that they sit over on the trailing edge end, and on the leading edge end I can feel the stubs that interface with the front edge of these tubes are all in line. So now I'm going to assemble the hardware in this end before I twist it all into position. Right, so I misspoke. It's not actually the tip end that I'm going to assemble the hardware in, it's the root end. So here goes. I'm going to insert my bolt enough through that I can put the saddle washer on the tail of it. Right, so I can feel that the stubs on this leading edge tube are still in line. The 3 compression struts are ready to fall into position as we twist this, and I've put the bolt through just enough that it'll catch the end of that tube as I rotate. Right, here we go. Double check again, make sure everything's in line, and twist. There we go. Right, now I'm going to squeeze a saddle washer in between this tube and the other end. Push it round. Into position. Right, so as you can see, I've squeezed the saddle washer into the gap there, and I've put a bit of string around it so I can pull this up to align with this hole here, which you can see is quite far out of line at the moment. But you can see the end of this bolt, if I could get it to focus, there we go, the end of this bolt is tapered, so when it's close we can tap this bolt in to pull everything into alignment. There we go, so using the torch to find the compression struts, use a pin just to mark the position of each of the bolt holes. 2 for the M6 bolts that hold the compression struts, and 1 for the hinge. Now that your hole positions are marked with a pinhole, take your soldering iron, and just open up the holes with the hot tip. Start with the material above, and then the material below. I try to melt out a relief for the bolt head. There we go, that's one elevator half fully recovered. All that's left to do on this half is the shrink up, but I'm going to do the other half first. So I'm going to put this aside and press on with the other side, which is almost identical with the exception of course, the trim servo. So I'll show you those differences as they come up. Right, so I'm going to start by drilling out the 2 rivets on the trim tab with a 4mm drill bit. Right, next the disassembly process is exactly the same, with the exception of the fact that you have to also remove the 2 screws holding the trim servo in place. If, like me, you had to drill out this rivet because it was rusty or for whatever reason, before you remove this bolt, just be sure to replace it to stop this internal tube from being free to move around. Right, so I've got all the individual components cleaned up with leading edge and I've treated them all with ACF 50, including the brand new trailing edge tube, which I've replaced because, as you can see, it's clearly bent. So I've applied the ACF 50 for future corrosion protection. Even though it's a brand new part, it should still help to prolong its life. So the first thing you're going to want to do on reassembly is get the servo inside the new skin. There we go, now the servo's in position, I'm going to press on and assemble the rest of the frame as I did with the last one. Right, that's the elevator all put together. The only difference there from the last one was, of course, that I had to melt the holes for mounting the trim servo to the leading edge tube, which I've done. Mounting is complete. I'm also going to change the trim tab as the original one is a little tatty. I'm just going to use the original to mark the hole positions to save me resetting up the trim tab. Of course, when everything's back together, I will check to make sure that it's still in line with the TADs. There we go, got my rivet marks. Gonna cast that aside. Now I'm gonna peel off the double-sided sticky tape. Just be careful not to let it stick before I have it fully in position. Right, there we go. That's both elevator halves reskinned. Now we move on to shrink up. Now to shrink up the skins, you're going to want your heat gun set on 500 degrees. Never leave the heat in one place for any length of time. You want to use circular motions, always moving, and systematically cover the entire surface area. We're going to shrink up the unsupported material on the top side, then the bottom, and then we'll work our way over the leading edge tube where the aluminium behind the skin will act as a heat sink, so it will require a little bit more heat, and same again for the trailing edge tube. And there we go, that's one elevator skin shrunk up. No discoloration, no creases. Right, here we go guys. That's both halves of the elevator, recovered, all parts inspected, cleaned, treated with ACF 50, skins fitted, skins shrunk. Now to join the two halves together, all you got to do is remove this M8 bolt here. There we go, bolt out. Slot the two halves together. There we go, reinstall the bolt. There we go, and finally turn the entire assembly over and install the last rivet. And there you have it. Worth mentioning, sometimes you get a mispull on these rivets. If you find that the mandrel doesn't pull up flush, then unfortunately you'll just have to drill it out and fit a new rivet. That said, thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you found it helpful. Like I say, we're going to be working through all of the control surfaces on a C42 over the next few months as the jobs come through our workshop. Don't forget that if ever you need any help, we're always here on the end of a phone line. We're always happy to help. In aviation, we don't guard secrets. At the end of the day, any bit of knowledge about a C42 could be the difference between life and death. So don't hesitate to give us a call and we'll see what we can do for you. Thanks for watching and see you soon.